Hi, Rohit. How are you?
Good. How are you, sir?
All fantastic. So nice to see you after it's been long. We met at the Shilpa's marriage last time, right?
Right, yeah. But I was just doing the math on how long we have known each other. What, 13 years? 14 years? Something like that.
My goodness, that's been quite a journey. Absolutely. Super. So thank you, Dr. Rohit, for joining in. Um,
Of course.
that we'll be discussing on. And really move ahead, whatever audience we have, I think audience would be gradually, increasing. But at this point of time, I would want to go through your file in a brief and let the audience know that whom they are interacting with today. So, uh, uh, everyone, I would like to read whatever Dr. Rohit has accomplished and gone through in his professional journey so far. So, Dr. Rohit Mehta is an assistant professor of secondary curriculum with instruction technology in the Department of Curriculum and Instruction at California State University, Fresno, United States. He conducts decolorizing and humanizing research on technology, creativity, and literacies to design inclusive and equitable learning environments for teachers across disciplines. I think this we would need to further understand from him. His work has been published in academic journals like Journal of Digital Learning in Teacher Education, Teaching Skills and Creativity, uh, Journal of Media, Literacy Education, and Tech Trends. As an educational researcher, his goal is to study and foster practices that are inclusive of multiple ways of being and knowing and doing. Currently, he is working with teachers in rural and urban school settings to use technology in creative and engaging ways, and has taught courses on educational psychology, toying with technology, adolescent learning, cultural competence, creativity in teaching and learning, and qualitative methodology. Dr. Mehta was enhancement. Just I think I have lost the track of email. Yes. So Dr. Mehta was Enhancement of Global Understanding Fellow to the Netherlands in 2016, Inside Teaching Fellow in 2016, and Residential College of Arts at Arts and Humanities Fellow for Hindi Integrated Language Option 15 and 16 at Michigan State University. Before coming into educational research and practice, he taught undergraduate level electronics engineering and worked as a higher education and study abroad counselor. So, first of all, Rohit, I can't tell you, that how proud I was feeling when I was going through your bio so far, right? So it feels, at an immense pride and the level of satisfaction as I go through your accomplishments. Now, of course, it's a lockdown period, COVID-19. First of all, I hope that everybody in your family, wife, and your kid are keeping hale and hearty in United States.
Yes, sir. Thank you for asking, and I hope everybody is doing well in India as well. Even though we are in California, I know things are harder in India right now. So my thoughts go out to everybody watching, everybody out there. I hope everyone is safe. And thank you for that introduction, sir. I just want everybody who's watching today, who's interested in higher education, to know that I walked into your office as a confused, nervous student who had no clue what he wanted to do, right? That's how we started. So if you're feeling like
Absolutely.
that, um, it it requires a little bit of hard work, of course, but it gets much more fun if you keep pursuing what you want to do.
Absolutely, Rohit. And that's why, I was going through a series of webinars and then off and on, these are the summers, and people don't take much time before asking what should I do, before analyzing themselves. They just want to talk to everyone that what should I do. So I think I got reminded of you, and as a student, probably you have gone through various domains, right? And you've reached to a point where you have a top view of the career building process and decision making. So that's why I thought of getting an expert and try to understand from you that how these career decisions are made, and you are at the forefront of this sector. So I think let's get the session started. My first question to you is exactly, of course, just want to know brief about from yourself also, and what exactly you're doing at this point of time.
Like you mentioned in the introduction, I am an assistant professor of secondary curriculum with instructional technology at California State University, Fresno. What that designation means is that I am partly responsible for training teachers who are going to be teaching in California schools. And my job is to teach them about the educational psychology, especially in adolescent age groups, teaching them how to teach effectively, teaching them how to teach with technology. Secondary curriculum means we are talking about secondary schools particularly, which is why adolescence is my age group of interest and expertise. I love working with middle school and high school kids, the toughest. To give an example of what a day-to-day is like, a lot of writing and research about what we are doing. But I'll give you like examples of three projects that I'm working on right now. First one is an international grant that we're working on with a lot of different universities, like from all the way from Virginia Tech to some folks from Drexel, California State University networks. We are redesigning the engineering and STEM education for Egypt. This is a United States government grant. And so the current status of Egyptian STEM schools or engineering schools is a lot like RGTV, a lot of
Uh-huh.
top-down, a lot of set rigid systems and syllabus, and we are breaking all of that and making it a very interdisciplinary and fun learning experience for all the students. So I every time I go to Egypt, I think of our students back in India and how much they can benefit from a similar redesign. Another project that we are working on right now is we are completely revamping teacher preparation in California, San Fernando Valley, which is the Valley area in California. Every new teacher coming from our program would now have a computing and computer programming knowledge in addition to their teacher content knowledge. So, for example, a mathematics teacher would now be able to program as well, and know what computational thinking is. So, creating more opportunities for students to do disciplinary pursuits in a digital world, right? The world is getting more and more digital. The jobs are getting more and more digital and electronic. And so, how do these different disciplines that we traditionally think of as regular work, face-to-face work, can be taken online? And a third example is my own research agenda, where I'm doing decolonizing research. What that means is picking carefully the legacy of global colonization and asking questions about what and the knowledge of the colonized people like us, people like the native populations in United States, Australia, right? And we ask questions about how can we change our practice to be more inclusive of those who have been historically marginalized by colonization. So it's a very interesting track. You can keep talking about that. But that's an example of the
Mm-hmm.
range of work that I get to since since I have found a way out of engineering, I suppose.
Yeah, absolutely. And recalling your journey and taking you back in time, right? So now, you are working very closely with education and education technology. How do you see your journey where you were an engineering student, right? You studied here, and how what affected your career choices so far?
So I think it's important to understand why I was in engineering in the first place, and I think this is a story that a lot of Indian students resonate with, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah, we were not in engineering out of choice, right? We were out there either because of lack of options or lack of knowledge, or just we were scared of doing anything that our friends and peers weren't doing, right? We just wanted to be in a known space. Engineering, as educational systems are structured in India, uh, we don't have a flexibility of opting out of a mistake that we can make as 15-year-olds, 17-year-olds, right? If we decide to go into science, we decide to go into engineering, it's a whole process to switch a major. If after first year of engineering you realize that this is not for you, um, you kind of stuck, aren't you? Or you have to drop out and get admission elsewhere. So that kind of flexibility was missing. And I realized very soon that yes, I'm a good student in mathematics and physics, and I can be a good student in engineering. But being a good student in something, that doesn't mean that I'm finding value in it, or I'm finding personal joy in it. And those were the two things that I found missing in my engineering education, even though I went to the US and got even quality engineering education. It was great, don't get me wrong. I was at University of Florida, one of the finest electrical engineering schools, right?
Absolutely.
Worked
Yeah.
with great people, but it's just the personal desire, the intrinsic motivation to learn about the world, to understand, to solve problems. My queries were not falling in engineering at all, and kind of kept feeling like I was in the wrong place, right? Because I felt I had nothing to contribute intellectually. So I use education or teaching as a route to get out of it, as you know.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
gained teaching experience, and I entered education through that experience. And Michigan State University, and you remember the the application process, how
Absolutely.
hard we worked on it, right? Just picking
Big
and
time.
choosing every single university,
Everything.
going over their website, going over every single program, comparing and contrasting what works best for me. And Michigan State was generous enough to offer me admission. Um, not despite my background, but because of my background. They knew that somebody who was coming from engineering, switching to educational psychology, uh, is not just doing it for the sake of getting out. Like a person who's making a switch like that knows that a switch is required at this time, right? Has something to offer. And the university saw that, and they trained me. Coming from a completely different background, had to work hard about rules and principles and epistemologies of education. Completely different world, right? A lot of things
Absolutely.
that we take for granted that we don't question are constantly contested and argued over in social sciences, in liberal arts, right? So it's not just a different discipline, it's a different way of thinking about the world. And that is what I needed. I realized that the more time I spent in education, I realized that it was so liberating for me. I could do anything. I could ask any question I want. I have written papers about films, education technology in movies, as you know,
Yeah.
right? Of
Movies.
course.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
where I started because I thought that would be fun. But then I got to know more about the ongoing research, and I've become more and more critical in my work. We are doing a lot of activism right now. We constantly contest teacher labor rights, student rights in their admission and their access to funds, and so we are becoming more and more political. At least I am with my colleagues, right? I would have never imagined thinking about those things and understanding them as an engineering student, right? I am so grateful for the hard work that we did together, sir. Because
Yeah, yeah. No,
now
I
I understand the ropes of how the society and the world works, so we can ask better questions. Uh, we can define problems in new and interesting ways, to find creative solutions for them, right? You realize that the world is way more than what your discipline offers it to be, right? And that is why I
absolutely.
wanted to talk more about disciplines today and interdisciplinary pursuits, especially for our viewers. Um, and what does it mean to have um, that home or feeling of a home in a discipline, right? A lot of our students come from engineering and science backgrounds and they think of themselves in engineering and science, but I think way more than that, right? I think our students have potential to be these interdisciplinary and these transdisciplinary problem solvers in the world, right? Just statistically speaking, it doesn't make sense to have that many people from one country graduating in one profession when we need artists, we need architects, we need
Yeah,
archaeologists, right? Who's doing the diggings? Who's asking questions about the history of India and actually looking for evidence of some of the theories that we have been debating for like centuries? Who's doing the archaeological work from India? Think of if we had as many archaeologists as we have engineers today, the kind of society India would be, right? The amount of knowledge we would have about our own culture, our own country, our history, um, in addition to what we know now, right?
absolutely.
So a social shift in a subject matter can shape a country's future, present, and even past. I hope that
Wonderfully
makes
put,
sense.
Rohit. Yeah, it makes it's complete sense, and I think that's why looking at your journey and trying to understand the title of the interaction that we are having is navigating higher education, pursuing interdisciplinary interest. But at this point of time, how do you see India coping up with the concept of interdisciplinary, liberal arts, and trying to know oneself and one's interest? So the students and parents, are at the receiving end. Nobody's there for them to guide how to do so. What can be that process of discovering one's interest? What age that Rohit, that parents or maybe the kids should know that 9th, 10th, what grade they should start discovering? Like you talked about archaeology, right? I really bet that living in a tier 2 city in Indore, right? People would ever be considering becoming an archaeologist. But I think if they know the process of becoming an archaeologist, right, and the perks and how they can contribute to the society, right, then they might start thinking that direction. So I think, what are the ways that parents can get, really, and students also, that they can decide that they're making the right decisions for their life and they'll find the joy and the value that you're talking about?
Right. So that is very important question, and that is the question, right?
That is the
That is a
question.
question
Yeah.
that is asked everywhere in the world, right? So what are the sources of knowledge that parents and students really have when it comes to education and career? People can ask around to relatives and colleagues that they know, but a lot of times that burden falls on educators, right? People like you, I think, would play a crucial role in tier two cities specifically in spreading information and knowledge about how to access these different disciplinary pursuits in education or through education, right? Um, Second thing I think is important is that teachers in schools, right? They need to know that their students have certain propensities and acumen that make them better fit to serve certain disciplinary pursuits more than others. That doesn't mean that they can be only limited into one type of discipline. What I mean by that is, for example, if you find a kid who's very good with Photoshops, right? Spends his time or spends her time playing with Photoshop and pretty good at it, we can't just limit them to, oh, so you can get a career as somebody who just edits images, right? We cannot limit to that. but we can get the essence from it that a child could be visually leading towards a skill of editing and modifying visual design, right? So we can think about it as a design profession. We can think of an arts. We can think of as animation, any media-based, visually dominant profession. All those fields open up because we know a kid has propensity in visual editing, right? But we don't think about it that way. We think about this tool or skill specific. We need to think of skill as independent of the tool, right? If I am good with identifying patterns, that is such a general skill that can be used in mathematics and music alike, right? So that's what I would want parents to focus on instead of focusing on grades or the scores that they get in exams. Focus on the skills that you're seeing in your kids. What are your kids naturally good at? And by naturally, I don't mean that intelligence or ability is a natural concept that either is or isn't. No, intelligence and creativity can be developed over a period of time. In fact, we need to think of every human being, every individual as intelligent and creative, as equally intelligent and creative, irrespective of the standardized test scores that we see. Test scores are not indicative of intelligence, and we know that for a fact in educational research. Uh, so we need to see beyond these numbers, and we need to see what the kids are actually doing, what are they good at, and as adults who know how the world works, we are more knowledgeable others in helping them navigate that space. That these skills are applicable across different territories. So that's the first side of it. That's the getting used to that mindset side of it. The other side of your question is the practical side of it. How do we get from that mindset to that practical application of it, right? So that's the tough part. That's where we have to do a lot of awareness and raising. And I would encourage all kids and parents to use this opportunity to explore what's out there through the internet, right? Explore different types of options that are available, explore different types of career that are going on. Because keep in mind, most of the jobs that your kids are going to be having do not exist today, right? The market and the job
Correct.
structure and the needs change so rapidly that even all the engineers graduating from the same degrees do not end up doing same job, right? Yes, there are a lot of testers and programmers out there, but the exact work that they do is very different from each other, right? The challenges that they face are quite unique, right? Their designation, their posts are completely something that did not exist like 10 years ago. Look at the amount of automation that is going on. Most and more things are being automatized, being controlled by robots, which means more creative pursuits for people, right? People would be participating in more and more creative and non-linear and ill-structured and complex jobs rather than monotonous and jobs that can be automatized, which means most of the jobs we have no idea what they will be, right, in 10 years down the line.
I think that's a very good point, and I was trying to recall one of the discussions with another educationist in India, and he made a point which really struck to me, that people are not going to change jobs, but people are going to change careers, right? So
Right,
so
right.
it's not just a job, but they might change 4 or 5 careers in their lifetime in the coming era, actually.
Right. Or we could also think of the careers and the educational degrees and everything else as only a part of your education. They are not the education, right?
Yeah,
For example,
absolutely.
if I got a degree, a bachelor's in engineering, a master's in electrical, or a PhD, that doesn't mean my education ended with that PhD, right? Education is an ongoing process. Education is experience, right? We are organizing, understanding our own experience better. We keep learning, we keep changing our thoughts, our minds, our beliefs, our behaviors, our practices. That is learning, that is education, right? That keeps going on and on and on. So we need to think about our education as something that is dear to us, something that is the only source of our personal and professional growth and development. That is needs to be something that we should be in charge of, not the system or not the society, right? These degrees would just come and go. Careers could be changed, right? Jobs could be switched easily, but it's you who's the connecting force in across all these domains, right? So you need to think about this as something that is driven by your own personal interest and inquiry. If you think about it that way, then you're not just changing careers, you're following a different line of inquiry, right? Now I'm not interested in designing cars. I'm more interested in helping teachers, right? I'm a human being. I know about both things. I want to spend my time more with the teachers than cars, right? I like to think of it that this as a shift in inquiry rather than a shift in career. That kind of reduces the pressure a little bit if you think about it, right?
What would be your sorry for interrupting. Yeah, carry on, please, Rohit. Yeah.
No, 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 please go ahead.
What are the tips, that you want to give to students or parents that, how they can really, at least, in India, right in 10th, commerce, science, the conventional rat race, the talks are always on, right? Uh, but of course, let him do science, let him do commerce, doesn't matter. But how parallelly with the school and, in the rat race, where are the ways, what are those tips that you want to give to parents, or the students for discovering themselves, in what ways? You work with the school kids and you really love working with them. So of course I wanted
Right,
to ask some tips. Yeah.
right. So, couple of things there as well. I think the first thing would be to not worry about what is in trend when it comes to taking majors, right? I heard from someone that commerce is picking up. When we were in school, we used to make fun of kids who went into commerce.
Commerce.
I know that's stupid. We shouldn't be doing that. What we did that we were in science and we thought like everybody was beneath us. I know for a fact that that was so stupid that it did more harm to me than anybody else, right?
Yeah.
So that's the first recommendation that I would make. That it does not matter what what is in trend. What's important is that the kid chooses a a major, a track that they feel personal connection or personal interest in, right? That the kind of questions that they want to ask about the world, the kind of things that motivate them fall in that scope, in that discipline. The second thing, to directly answer your question, is I would encourage parents to let kids try different hobbies and different pursuits that, from your perspective, would fall under other areas. For may it be arts, may it be mathematics, may it be philosophy. Get some organization into the hobbies as well. The only organized form of inquiry that we do is through our formal education right now. But formal education doesn't need to be the only way of conducting organized inquiry. All you need is a method to the madness that is around us. So come up with your own procedure. Come up with a way of doing things. That for example, when I paint, I have this process of doing it. It's my process. There is no right and wrong in doing that, right? So trying these different pursuits, trying these different avocations, help make interdisciplinary connections between our core careers and our extracurricular or our additional pursuits. Research in creativity has shown that teachers, for example, who have interests in other areas aside from their content, um, are most creative and most engaging in classrooms because they make connections for students with real world aspects that they don't usually get in core disciplinary instruction. So it's common sense if you think about it. Let kids do what they like to do.
Amazing. But I think I still don't see any scope that students or parents till 12th, till high school would be able to discover themselves, or, because,
Yeah.
and I don't see any hope. So do you think that pursuing liberal arts is a better choice than going for, a streamline, CS or a BCom or BBA, something like that?
Oh,
Because,
Yeah, I mean it's not wise to say which one is better or worse. I think whatever is a I cannot stress this enough when I say a personal interest or internal like inquiry. Maybe we are not able to define it by the time we are in school or by the time we graduate school, right? That's fine. It just shows that we need more time to figure out the language to talk about what's interesting to us, right? We may not know the language, how to describe what I'm feeling. So we need to keep in mind that these set career tracks and aspirations that people are pursuing, these are only trends. These would come and go, right? But what is going to last with you is the career or the track or the line of inquiry that you would choose to conduct throughout your life, right? So it should not be dependent on what is going on or what is hip in the market right now. If that were the case, I would still be in engineering,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, yeah.
So that is not the way to go about it, right? But then we need to also think about the concerns that parents have. Arts or some kind of job that would not make them money if they get a job in the first place, right? That's the concern. But
The
that's not
paying
the scenario in the
bills.
United
Yeah,
States. Yeah, paying bills.
absolutely.
Yeah, it's
Yeah,
always the financial motivation, right? कि बेटा पैसा कितना बनेगा. So,
absolutely.
especially when we're thinking of coming to the United States, that shouldn't be an issue because there's so many range of opportunities for people to go into and find jobs that actually align with their personal interests. So liberal arts, and for people who don't know the difference between what liberal arts is and what's opposed to it, so think of liberal arts as anything that is non-vocational. So any intellectual discipline, any intellectual inquiry-driven discipline would count as liberal arts. So any social sciences, even physical sciences would count as liberal arts if we are
Absolutely.
doing the intellectual pursuits, right? So an MSc would be a liberal arts degree, technically, right? Unlike ME, which
Yeah,
is Masters of Engineering, which is a
indeed.
vocational degree, right? So liberal arts is certainly the way forward, I would say, because connecting back to my previous point about automation, imagine trucks being automatized, computer programming, computer, perhaps not programming yet, but computer testing jobs, they're going to be
Hmm,
automatized
hmm.
next, right? Those are the biggest chunk of jobs that Indian graduate students do in the United States is software testing. Um, if that is the next job being automatized, then what opens up as a field for human beings to pursue careers in? That's liberal arts. Because intellectual
That's
and
lots.
complex and non-linear uh, fields like philosophy, arts, humanities, these are harder to automatize. These need creative ideas. These need different ideas,
Creative.
right? We need storytellers. We need artists. We need poets, right? These people speak truth to society, speak truth to power, right? Like I said, we need archaeologists, we need scientists, we need chemists, right? We need way more people than engineers. I'm talking about India specifically, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, that is all possible only if we let our kids go into liberal arts.
And I think though people will only survive in the coming eras if they can innovate, they can think out of the box, and they bring their creative quotient on the ground, actually.
Right, and that is what like a lot of people in educational scholarship are calling 21st century skills. The 21st century skills, core disciplinary knowledge, content knowledge is just one of 9 or 10 skill sets that educators deem important today. Creativity, collaboration, life skills, interdisciplinary knowledge, digital literacy, those are becoming important as well, right? But we tend to only give priority or value to core content knowledge. I still hear from people saying, "Oh, you don't know how to do math. I don't want to hear you. You must be stupid." Right? We make assumptions about intelligence based on how much or how little somebody knows, right? That's all ridiculous. You need to stop doing that. You need to start thinking about other disciplines, about the value that they bring in. How think about how much are we limiting ourselves by not allowing ourselves to go across and see what else is out there.
That's the whole paradox and irony of the situation, and that's where I wanted to push a point that students and the parents, they need to know that how the education system in India and United States differ. So I want your take on
Mhm.
that. How do you think that bachelor's degree in India and in United States, or maybe East versus West, whatever you may call it? So how do you see that?
Right. So people see pros and cons in both approaches, right?
Mm-hmm.
A lot of educators here would keep arguing against what works here, what we in India would die to have. Um, and I think the key difference that we can talk about or start from is the choice that students have to
Mm-hmm.
change their mind, right? The freedom to change your mind, the freedom to realize that it's okay that I made a mistake, but I'm gonna make up for that, and I'm gonna do something else now, right? So students have a choice to switch majors, to change their topics, when they are in high school. They have that flexibility throughout middle school and high school. They have that flexibility when they are in undergraduate. Because when they enter undergraduate education, which is our 4 years bachelor's degree, students take foundational courses, or a pool of foundational courses that they can pick from. They can start building their own interests and inquiries. In Depending on universities, in their second year, they pick of what their major would be. They can also change it later. Some people change their major so many times, that parents get a little upset. And make up your mind. I've seen people gone from medicine to music, realizing that medicine is not for them. Indian parents in the US do that too, by the way,
Uh-huh. Oh,
pushing kids into like, oh, be a
science.
doctor. Yeah, be an engineer. So that's here too. So don't, yeah, let's not get too happy about it. But at least the kids have choice when they enter the universities, right? And I think that's the biggest difference. So in India, and this is what we call tracking. Tracking is that when you enter a track that you cannot escape, right?
Oh,
That
okay.
happens in what, 10th grade now? That in 10th grade you have to decide whether you want to be a science student or a commerce student, right?
Correct.
After 2 years of education in, say, science in 11th and 12th, students feel a certain amount of understandable fear in reconsidering whether they have done anything wrong, right? Should I go into commerce after 2 years of putting so much hard work into cracking IITs and AIEEE and whatnot, right? So not only there is limited choice for students to switch, there is also a lot of social and systemic pressure for them to perform, right? It's a heavily performance-oriented educational system, right? Where we are giving more value to the number that a student can achieve in a test than the actual potential of the student. And I think you would see that as the biggest difference. In the United States, in bachelor education, there's no ranking system. You get a grade on the work that you have done. So think about how liberating that is as a practice, that now you don't have to compete against any of the people in your class or your cohort. You don't have to. All you have to compete against is your own previous self, right? How can I be better as an individual? This is the course that I want to take because that is something I find interesting, right? So you can pick and choose and make your own degree by the end of your 4 years. That is a completely unique education that you can create for yourself. I think that is a very liberating experience in itself.
And that's why I think when you go for masters in United States, you just somehow want to finish that 1.5 to 2 year period and get a job and start repaying the loans. And that's why to really
Yes.
evolve, I think undergrad is the way to move ahead in United States, or maybe any developed country where such kind of an education system prevails.
Right. And I would like to kind of just like take a word of caution. While we are
Hmm.
thinking of these educational systems as slightly better, uh, we also want to refrain from calling them developed or not. We do some things very well. They do some things better, right? There's difference, yeah. However, yes, like the key flexibility, the idea of creating your own education or your own experience, I think that is crucial, right? That happens in the United States, but it also happens in Canada. It also happens in Australia, New Zealand, like you said, in most of the European countries too,
Mm-hmm.
certainly. But to agree with your point, yes, the graduate education gives you a better sense of flexibility because you spend your core 4 years here, not only digging deeper into curricular pursuits, but also extracurricular pursuits, getting to know different cultures, different people better, right? The sooner we get embedded into people or culture that are different from us, the more we also learn to empathize and care and try and see ourselves as a human being who's a part of a bigger network. We don't get a lot of diverse experiences in India, to be honest.
Mm-hmm.
Especially like in a city like Indore, most of the people we know are from similar backgrounds. The biggest difference that you would see is socioeconomic, that some people are from upper middle class, some are from lower middle class, right? That's the difference that you would see, but not a lot of cultural or racial or linguistic diversity that you would see. Or linguistic actually you would see, but not as much as you would see here. Kids from Nigeria, Japan, India, Korea, France in the same classroom, right? Talking and working on the same projects. It's a completely different experience.
And that's where the irony here in India is that schools are is still slightly decent, but the moment they go to college, they I see those 3 or 4 years as a period of deterioration. I mean, it might be sounding slightly harsh, right? But that's what I've seen, that if, let's say, if they're not in the top tier schools or IITs, even, I
Right.
mean, IITs also, I haven't seen the diversity. Like we dream a combination of a student which has, maybe analytical skill set of an IIT, but at the same time philosophical angle of JNU, right?
Right. Right.
And here we see either IITians or JNU, and we don't see a person who has both kind of intellectual skill
Right.
set.
Exactly. That's what we need. That's what we need. We need a person who understands the philosophy of JNU and the epistemology of IIT, right? Who understands the sensitivity of being an artist, but also understands the pragmatism of being an engineer, right? Who knows the core human challenges of existence, but also knows to take a step back and see that life is more than just worrying about existence, right? So there's a lot of different combinations that you need to lead a balanced life. And I
Mhm.
keep making the argument in my work and all the talks that I'm trying to do is that that balance can be achieved or is an essential part of that balance, discipline, right? Or disciplinary pursuits or thinking of ourselves as interdisciplinary individuals. You are a perfect example of that, right? So many things that you know and do and are interested in, that gives you a sense of feeling like a complete or a whole human being, right? If you keep
Mm.
pursuing just one aspect of your interest, that is like exploring only 20% of your personality.
Absolutely, Rohit. Yeah, very, very good point, mate. And uh, in a sense, talking about the phase where, it's the first time that humanity has seen this COVID era, right? Unprecedented. It was never before. Things were never before like this. So, in terms of career building process, right? Do you think that career building process is going to change to a certain extent post COVID? Some careers, and what is your opinion? I mean, how parents and students should look that post COVID, what is the era in terms of career building, and what is the message for school going kids who are deciding to do their undergrad?
Um, that's a very tough question to answer because you know the situation is evolving, right? And this is like unlike anything before. For example, CSU, the biggest university network, or one of the biggest university networks, has gone fully online for fall
Oh, okay.
already. They had to make that decision, right? Because we don't know at this point whether the fall would be open or not. So we had to make that choice. We're shifting all our courses online. We don't know how normal things are going to get. The hope is that COVID becomes one of the flus that we have vaccinations for, and then we just learn to live with that. That would
Mm,
mean that life can get back to normal, right? In any case, what this crisis is teaching us is the potential of internet-based education or online education,
brilliant
and
point. That
also
was good.
mobile learning, right? How much of learning can be done on your phone without even turning it over to landscape mode, right? Think this is just a facetious point, but think about it. Like video and content has changed because people hold their phone like this. They don't like to flip the phone and hold it like this because it's uncomfortable, right? How long can you do that? You need a
Wow.
stand for that, right? So even educational technologies and tools are redesigning to display content in a portrait mode. What that's telling us is that people are paying close attention to how people are using media over the internet, right? You can see that in elections. You can see how much money is spent on social media marketing now, how much content is being generated against political parties and whatnot. Elections are being won and lost on social media. What Facebook did to the 2016 American election, right? All the things are happening on social media, just like learning. However, one mistake that people make thinking of online education or learning or doing personal pursuits over the internet is that the teacher is not important anymore, which is a myth. You still need more knowledgeable others, or you still need facilitators or instructors who can guide you or help you navigate the pursuit of learning, right? So to answer your question, parents need to start thinking about how kids can be more in charge of their own learning practices and how they can still have connections with and relationships with experts in different areas that can usually come from educators, but also people they may know who are pursuing different types of careers. Relationships between adults and children, adolescent, and more knowledgeable others, that has shown to be a key factor in helping kids figure out what's best for them because they see role models. They see the act of being a professional in practice. They see someone doing it, right? The hardest time a lot of kids have that at a younger age, especially, they don't know what a scientist is. So they see on media, they see an Albert Einstein-like fellow, and they see, oh, I am not like that. So maybe I'm not fit to be a scientist. When the
Stereotype.
reality is, yeah, when the stereotypes, right? So when the reality is that anybody who wants to do science can be a scientist. It doesn't matter what they look like. It doesn't matter what they wear. You don't have to wear. I'm wearing a cat t-shirt right now. This is how I teach. This is how I go to university, right? Because my clothes, my appearance should not be indicative of what I know or what I don't know, right? That's the kind of things we need to start thinking about. How can we get our kids access to better role models, right? What's available on the media? What are we seeing in films and television, right? What do we see our heroes representing, right? What do we see our favorite actors playing? We see a lot of movies coming out about like space missions now. So we see different types of people playing the roles of scientists, right? Our Mangal mission India, we saw that beautiful picture of women in saris who were celebrating the landing
Joy.
of the rover that we sent, right? The joy.
Mm.
And women in saris being scientists is something that we don't really imagine. If you ask a kid to draw a scientist, they would never draw a woman in sari, right? And
Absolutely.
that is the kind of stigma that hinders kids into imagining themselves in those future careers because they don't see people like them in those future careers. The
Mm.
impact of seeing a woman in sari as a scientist, as an ISRO scientist who can land a freaking rover on Mars, I think the implications of that are huge. The world noticed that. Everybody noticed that. Everybody saw how important and crucial that was, right? So that is the kind of stuff I want parents and kids to start thinking about, the liberation of your own education, right? Take charge of that. Use the internet to pursue these different careers. Explore around, right? Learn more. But more importantly, in a time of internet and social media based education, be very, very critical. There's so much information out there that is fake, that is manipulated. Look at the sources, right? Ask questions. Who posted it? Right? Where is it coming
Mm,
from? What is the source of it? Right? What do they gain from this? What do they gain from making a simple joke about someone? Right? These things are very carefully crafted, and they are out there for a purpose, and it becomes our responsibility as learners to navigate that space. We need to know how to separate BS, what's crap out there, from what's
mm.
actually crucial content, right? Um, those things, media literacy, internet-based education, mobile learning, these are very liberating tools if we use them properly. I
And
hope that
that's
helps.
where yeah, yeah, absolutely, and that's where probably one needs to have one own idea of learning rather than depending on either the schools or the college. I think one needs to evolve oneself.
Right. So, like I said earlier, schools and formal education are important because they give us structure and organization, right? They give us a way of thinking from a certain disciplinary point of view. But that's not the extent of education, like I said, right? Education is beyond these degrees, beyond the formalization. Education is every moment. Education is this webinar, right? Just
Mm.
spending time here. Education is just scrolling through Facebook and sinking in a couple of things here and there. That's also, you're learning something there, right?
Absolutely
So
brilliant.
education
Yeah.
is happening all the time. It does not stop at any point. Even when you're sleeping, you're dreaming, and you have that new information to process now, right? We are still learning. Our brain, okay, so this is another research we have from neuroscience. Brain develops and makes connections, not develop, makes connections between things it hasn't made connection before if you give it some time to just do nothing. Downtime is important for creativity and making
I was
connections,
I was actually
right?
coming to the same
How
point. Yeah.
how much time do we give ourselves to just do nothing? When you are actually doing nothing, you are on your phone, you're scrolling, right? When you're scrolling, you're processing new information. When you're reading a book you have read before, you're still processing new information, I would say, because you are a new person. A new person reading the same book is a new book, right? Doing nothing would literally mean doing nothing. Just put down your phone, put down your books. I don't know if people are reading books nowadays, anyways, but put down your phone and your iPads and your laptops, and just do nothing for a few minutes, and see what that means if you make that a practice. Meditation, for instance, and like Indian people love doing that. Oh yeah, we've been doing that for ages, right? Oh, meditation goes back for thousands of years. Meditation does go back for thousands of years, but I do want to know how many of us are actually doing it today,
Yeah.
every day, right? So
So
that
one of the
downtime is crucial. Yeah,
yes.
sorry.
One of the key takeaways, and in fact, you keep connecting to my own like thoughts which were coming. So doing that's why, because you say that the brain has to process things, right? And doing nothing, or maybe doing meditation, right? And this is where we have no empty time if we are doing nothing. We're nothing but on the phone, actually, right?
Right,
So I
right,
think this is one of the very important key takeaways that the audience can take, that doing nothing and maybe, doing meditation also, as you said, right, would be
right.
one of the most important parts of one's daily routine, right?
Yes, yes, certainly, daily routine. And I would also like to make us kind of a related comment about the social media and media literacy I was saying earlier, and downtime. Social media apps that we use, like Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, these are designed very carefully for you to be addicted to them, right? Think of the example of notifications, for instance. That feeling when you scroll down and push hard to scroll down on the top of your page for the page to reload and the notifications to pop up, you must have noticed that there's a second or two delay for you to refresh and the notice to pop up, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, that delay is coded in it. It's not
Intention.
there. There doesn't need to be a delay because everything else works fast, but there's a delay when you scroll. That delay is there because that waiting, that anticipation, that releases dopamine in the brain. Dopamine gives you a reward that, okay, this is nice. I like this.
Mm,
Dopamine is also responsible for addictive behavior,
yeah.
right? When people who take drugs, dopamine becomes a necessity, right? You need more dopamine. Social media is doing the same thing to you, right?
Absolutely.
Apps are designed in a way that you can do infinite scrolling. You can keep scrolling, right? So there are two types of apps you think about it. One that have infinite scrolling, the others that are in and out apps. Infinite scrolling apps like Instagram, even news feeds, right? You can keep scrolling. Content would never end. There's enough content out there.
Mm,
But in and out apps like your alarm app, you go in, you do your job, and you're out, right? Scrolling apps would keep you addicted. They want you to be in there because the more time you spend in there, the more money they make
right.
off your attention. What they want is your attention, right? So the answer is simple then. All we want to do is keep our attention, right? Not give it to just anybody because everybody wants your attention nowadays, right? People make money
Yeah.
off your attention. If
We
you're
need to
not looking at the
prioritize. We need to
ads,
prioritize. Absolutely.
exactly. So all the answers that I'm giving you, like the inquiries, the meditations, and the discussions, all that is saying is that put your attention and your time elsewhere, right? Not on social media, but elsewhere. I would say just start with anywhere else. Stop for social media.
Absolutely.
Use that time to pursue any new inquiry, right? And just start with it. Let's see what happens.
What is your message, Dr. Rohit, to the parents who are handling these kids, high school kids, 10th, 11th, 9th, 10th grades?
Uh, I'm
To
sensing that
parents, I
you're
mean.
thinking about mobile phones. Is that your
Mobile
question?
phones, mobile phones, and every sort of negative thing that a parent can imagine for their kid
Right,
in this tender age, right? So
right,
parents often ask us that how should we make sure that our kid is disciplined enough, right? Is he going in the right direction? How do we discover our kid? So in general, what is your 2 cents on the message for that?
right. So again, that is a big question. That is a concern that parents have. So I would like to give kind of a flipped answer to that one. So while I said social media is a trouble, right? I don't think the same for mobile technologies or a more consciously designed app that does not,
Yeah, connection, or maybe I think there was some time limit or something like that. I'm sorry. So,
right? Yeah, no
so
worries.
yeah, so we were talking about the parents and how to really, help them.
Right. So I just wanted to make a point that while social media is being designed in a manipulative way, mobile devices are not necessarily a bad thing, right? So just because kids are on the phone, that doesn't mean it's necessarily a bad thing. What we need to be looking out for is what types of texts and material and content are kids really engaging in and creating with the mobile devices that they have, right?
Hmm.
There's a lot of research around youth literacies and youth practices, and more educators are being mindful of that kids are not going to be working and creating the same way as we used to. It's going to be more digital, more multimedia work that they would create. So we need to start thinking of these practices as intelligent and creative practices, right? So we need to see what kids are doing. We need to reinforce the practices that are creative, that are knowledge driven, that are inquiry driven, and we need to be mindful of whether they are not spending too much time dealing with content that is not good for them, right? And again, that is something that comes at parents' discretion, right? You and I cannot tell parents to decide what's right and wrong for their kids. It's their choice to make. Uh, but when it comes to discipline, I'm more of a lenient. I have more of a lenient approach to it. I think we have very different definitions of discipline. I don't think I think kids should be organized. They need to know what works best for them. They need to know themselves, right? And that to me is discipline, right? Discipline is not simply just listening to what your parents said and agreeing with it. And parents are not going to like what I have next to say. When kids are in their adolescence, they are becoming individual human beings, right? They are going to obey less and less because they are thinking for themselves now, right? So our jobs as parents, once our kids start into the adolescence, is to not think of somebody who's going to obey us, who's going to follow us, who's going to listen to us or do everything we say. They are a unique individual. They have their own thoughts, their own ideas that they're forming. We need to start respecting and thinking of them as one, right? So instead of worrying about discipline, start talking to them about what they feel. Talk to them as if you would talk to another adult, right? One joke that I make with my kids is when they ask like, how should I talk to adolescents? I say, talk to them how you would talk to Dwayne the Rock Johnson,
Yeah,
because
yeah,
he seems like an intimidating fellow, right?
yeah.
But he's also very kind. So how would you talk to someone like that? You try to be nice, but you can be funny a little bit, right? So talk to your kids that way. If you
Amazing.
try and control them, give them commands and ask them to obey, that's not a long-term solution.
Uh, uh, Perfectly put, Dr. Rohit. My next question would relate to, and probably the last one, sorry for bothering you much, right? We already passed the limit, but I would not get this opportunity again because, of course, your time is precious, and of course, the online
Of
learning
course.
is going on. Yep.
Yes.
Oh God. Okay.
Yeah.
So,
Summer semester started today.
okay. So my question was, you see in India nothing demeaning toward IITs, right?
Mhm.
Nothing demeaning towards the great institutions of technology, but devoting 3-4 years morning to the night and not thinking about anything else. How fair is that? I mean,
Um,
how you see the kids, right?
right,
From ninth onward, they have their schedule fixed for the 4 years, right?
right, right. Yeah, but I know those kids. I grew up with those kids. I wanted to be one of those kids, right? Everybody wanted to be one of those
Yeah.
kids.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. Um, I think that dedication, that hard work, and that fixed schedule, all of that would be great if most of the kids graduating from IITs were actually doing technology and engineering related pursuits instead of opening restaurant chains or bringing the new Mexican franchise to India or selling a new app idea to Facebook for multi-million dollars. The motivations are problematic, I would say. So IIT, in my opinion, is not doing the job it was designed for, right? We are shifting kids from IITs to IIMs, to management, to business. There's nothing wrong with being money driven, but pursuing careers for the sake of money, it can only work for an individual, but not for a society, right? So we need to think of ourselves as a part of the society too, right? It's not just about us; it's about everybody else. We have some social responsibility. So, so I don't know what more to say about IIT. I don't think it's as effective as it should be, but I still think it's a great institution. It's still if I had a choice today, if I would graduate from high school, I would not even sit in JEE or AIEEE or any of those exams. Even if
Hmm.
I knew that I was guaranteed an admission in IIT today, I would not do that. I would not waste my time. I shouldn't be saying waste, but that's how I feel personally. It's not an informed or researched opinion. That's my personal opinion. I'm not afraid to say that. But I would not spend my time in IIT today.
Hmm. Got that. Very valid point, and that's the pain that I see when student has given entire 4 years of preparation and not even getting into IIT, and forget about IIT, not even NITs, and ends up into a college which is doing like complete disservice, to the building of that student.
Yeah, the what's supposed to be a center of exchange of knowledge and growth and inquiries and research. We all, I don't need to present more evidence to know that I we all know that not a lot of that is happening,
Yeah,
right?
absolutely.
Yeah,
So, I mean, probably that's how we should conclude that students should go out, use the mobile technology in the right way, get lot of downtown, not lot of, but at least some downtown meditation, process the brain in the right way, discover themselves and keep pursuing diverse interest as early as possible so that they can really know where they want to be at the end of the day, and
certainly.
not worry about the money and job and those concerns.
Right, because I think yes, there are some social challenges to what's available as a job or not. But if you are good at something, you would know the field better by the time you graduate, by the time you enter the market. So we know better how to navigate and find jobs. So we shouldn't be driven by that in at an age of 17 at least.
At least. And I think, do you think it's right, Roy, that it said that eventually you will be there where your skill ought you to be?
If you persist, yes,
Yeah,
yes,
absolutely. So
yeah.
I'll take this as one of my most prized conversations,
Oh, thank you.
and
That means a lot.
yes, thank you, Dr. Rohit, so much for your time and your guideline and sharing your entire experience with us, which has been phenomenally diverse, and accomplishing in its sense. Your concluding thoughts.
I thank you so much for having me. I'm really just happy to be of any help. I would encourage students to reach out if they have any questions, if you just want to talk about what they're processing. I'd be happy to help. Um, the world is a beautiful place, and I know it sounds cliched, but we don't see the beauty that much in the news and the media and the day to day, right? Which is why a lot of that responsibility of creating beauty falls on us through our jobs, through the work that we do. You don't have to be an artist to make something beautiful. The
Yeah,
theory of relativity is beautiful, isn't it?
yeah.
Right? So,
Maybe you
so
need
just
to
keep
be.
pursuing.
Yeah,
Yeah, just
you
keep
should be
pursuing
able to
what you want
see
to
it.
pursue and create beauty. Exactly. See, the beauty lies in the eye of the beholder, right? But you have to create beauty in what you do.
Great. Amazing. So probably, while you were answering, I also went back in time and recalled our moments, our journey together, right?
Right.
Where, I got to know you as a person more when you came back from US, right? By
Right.
the time you were going to US, you were just a student and, wanted to go to US like anybody else. But then you came
Right.
back, taught students, and there our interaction got closer, right, and thicker. And then probably, you made some choices, and I
Right.
see you at this point of time where your family, me, and everybody at Globalizers and all across are super proud of you.
Thank you, sir. That means a lot. Thank you.
Absolutely. So, Rohit, now you can carry on with your, I think, day. Have a great day ahead. Thank you so much for your time, and guideline again.
Thank you. Good night, everyone. Thank you.
Good night. Thank you. Bye bye.
Bye. Bye.